Well, it seems that we are now live. And I usually just try to ignore the fact that we're live uh, because that way I just know I'm talking to you out there as well. So I do that. Any questions before we resume our study this morning? Okay. All right. I think last week, in closing, I began to ask a couple of questions, but if you'll remember, under the heading of this series, being considerate or consider one another, be considerate of one another to stir up love and good works. I'm not going to do much of a review today, if anything, but last week we talked about the source of love. We talked about the language of love recently. We talked about the benefits of love. And I think when we ended last week, we talked about the conundrum of love. And that is simply that sometimes the challenge to love can be confusing, it can be difficult. But if we're going to love as God intended for us to love, He has given us the greatest example as to how to do that. So today we will kind of close out with the thought about the calling of love. The calling of love. If you remember last week, as we were closing out, we talked about some expressions or quotes by George Washington that expressed the seriousness of selecting an inner circle of friends. And George Washington said, it's better to be alone than in what? Bad company. Bad company. He said, be courteous to all, but intimate with few. And let those few be well tried and tested before you give them your confidence. And then he closed with, true friendship is a plant of slow growth and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to designation. We ended with the thought that God allows you to choose your spouse, your best friend. Choosing well is fundamental to well-being. You have numerous acquaintances, but a small group of intimate allies with whom you spend most of your time. And I think we ended with this thought, does being around this person make me stronger or weaker? By selecting a circle of friends who bring out the best in you, you're building a social network that will sustain your soul. And if that is what you want for your children, then is it not what God wants for His children? The same thing. In this thought about the calling of love, even more important than choosing honorable associates is purposing within yourself to be considerate in our dealings with others. I may have shared this, I don't remember if I did in the opening or not. This is probably a consideration that probably most people don't even think about. As I travel down the street sometime, I see a lady, and she's always walking or either stopped, and she waves at every car that goes by. Now, what do you think I do when I drive past that lady? Wave or beep beep, honk the horn and wave. Why would I do that? Now, you may ask the question, wait a minute, how often do you see this lady? Maybe 5 days a week. Now, there may be some mental health problem, I don't know. But if she's waving at you, you could at least do what? Wave back. Now, I know that I've met people that may have special needs, and this just may be one. But what is it asking of me to take a moment in my commute to wave? Now, you know, the strangest thing, I saw her maybe the day before yesterday. Normally, she's just standing there waving. But this time, she was just walking along. And I looked and I said, she's not waving today. I didn't know whether to think, is she having a good day or is it a bad day? But you know what? Beep, beep, I blew the horn and kept going, just in case. Why? I guess it's kind of like when you see a child on the side of the road and maybe they're waiting for a big truck to come by. Anybody know what they tend to do? And what does that mean? To get the truck driver to blow the horn. Okay? And if that truck driver didn't blow the horn, they probably going to walk away sad. I look at a lot of Facebook posts and some of them dealing with trains. And I don't remember where it is, but there's one, I think, out in Southwest Virginia, if my memory calls correctly. But whenever the train would pass this little boy's backyard, he had learned exactly how many horn blasts the train should blow as entering an intersection. And he looked like he couldn't be but maybe 8 years old. But he would stand there as the train would come by, and he would go, and he'd wait. And he was giving the engineer. And then in this one post, it showed where the engineer stopped the train right there by him and went through the whole exercise for him. Now, I worked with the railroad for 11 years. They probably had to get special permission from their supervisor to stop the train for that moment. Was it worth it? Absolutely. They considered him to stir up love. Simple things. Yes, Peggy. Even though that lady didn't wave that time, right. When you went by and blew the horn, you showed her that you saw her and you noticed her. Absolutely. And we think that's a little thing, isn't it? But that's what the scripture is telling us. It doesn't have to be something huge to where everybody takes notice of us, but the little things. Consider one another to stir up love and good spirit. So even more than choosing honorable associates is purposing to be considerate in your dealing with others. Regardless to how you are treated, make up your mind to be courteous and kind to all. 1 Peter 3:8. Never repay evil for evil. Instead, overcome evil with good. Romans 12:17. Jesus recommended 3 courses of action when people hurt you. 1, pray for them. Pray for them. When people hurt you and don't make one effort to forgive you, if you harbor the feelings of anger and disgust or even hate, who is it hurting? You. So if you just make up in your mind at that moment to be considerate, you're going to forgive them. Why are you forgiving them? Well, 2 reasons. 1, because it's the right thing to do, even if they don't ask for it. God said so. It's the right thing to do. But you know what? It's going to cause you to sleep better at night, won't it? Let it go. Hanging on to it will only hurt you. Pray for them. Luke chapter 6 says also, bless them. By being considerate towards them in spite of themselves, you're blessing them with the love of God through you. If God basically cut us off for the things that we do bad, we would be in bad shape, wouldn't we? God loves us in spite of ourselves, and he expects us to love others just as he loves us. Number 3, he says, do good to them. Do good to them. I would say, how do you start doing good to them? By the very first suggestion, pray for them. Pray for them. You may not be able to do much more than that for them, but that's a beginning. No matter what happens in that relationship, never ever stop loving them. Don't stop loving them. Christianity is a call to a considerate lifestyle modeled after Jesus' concern for others. His tenderheartedness led him from heaven to the cross. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. In other words, Jesus is simply saying, quit thinking only of yourself. He's saying, following him puts the welfare of others before your own comfort and convenience. Quit thinking only of yourself. Consideration produces civil behavior in our society. It produces productivity in the workplace. It produces happiness in our homes. It produces unity in the church. Considering one another is the welcome burden of a Christ-like heart. If we can't find a way to be considerate of all, then we're jeopardizing what we believe is our Christ-like heart. Yes.
I feel being considerate one another depends on and is based on my love for my God.
Okay.
You got the right kind of love for your Lord, you're going to consider other people and be kind to them, even though they're rude.
Well, you're asking the question, or you're answering the question that I would have asked next, and that simply is in my self-assessment, do I consider what is God's will in my decision to offer consideration to someone else? And thank you for that.
It's a job.
It is, but it is God's will. It is God's will. And we can say, well, I just don't know what to say. Then that's when you pray. God will hear your prayer. No matter how confusing and stumbling it may be, he's not just reading the words that are coming out of your lips, he's reading what's in your heart. Okay? In my self-assessment, do I consider what is my responsibility as a Christian? What is Jesus' number one rule for healthy relationships? Matthew 7:12. The golden rule. Simply do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. What is the basic skill of Christian living? The very thing we talked about in the beginning 4 or 5 weeks ago. If we are Christians, we must have empathy for others around us. We must care about their needs. Kindness and forgiveness spring from what kind of heart? Tender heart. I realize that we live in an uncivil world, but don't allow our tender hearts as Christians to become hardened because of the environment of the world that we're living in. As I said this morning, we all want to earn our crowns, our rewards, don't we? Jesus never promised us that it would be easy. But what he did promise us is what? That reward. Remain faithful. Okay, as we move forward, I want us to think about being kind. And this is where my challenge comes now, because I think I'm moving to another slide for a moment. Let's see here. Yes, I am. This guy. Okay. Yes, this is it. Okay. Consider one another. When I was young, I admired clever people. Now that I'm old, I admire kind people. Abraham Joshua Herschel. He was an American theologian and philosopher. When I was young, I admired clever people. Now that I'm old, I admire kind people. What do you think he's saying? I would guess in a nutshell, we ought to get better with age. When you're young, you're full of vinegar, aren't you? And somewhere down the road, we learn a lot of life lessons. And then we realize clever people may not necessarily be the path that I want to follow forever. But now that I'm old, I admire kind people. Yes.
I know I don't mean to be talking too much, but this comes to my mind years ago when Mama was here. She would pass by someone and nobody said nothing. Well, that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And she would make a comment. She said, they didn't even say hi or anything. I said, Mom, you don't have to wait for the other person to speak. You speak first if you need to speak. And then it worked out beautiful. I told her how to speak first and then the other person would speak. You don't wait for somebody else to do something. You do what your heart wants you to do.
Absolutely. Um, you may not have been here, and maybe you were the Sunday that I mentioned that as we were waiting for services to start, and usually you'll find the deacons and elders at the door, opening the door or greeting people to come in. And it was close to time for service to start. One person came through, and a deacon and I think I held the door open, and he was on the other side. And we both said, "Good morning," right on past. And I mentioned to you that I was hurt. But you know how I blessed that person? Prayed for him. That was sad, you know. But we will see people like that probably as long as we live. How do we bless them? First, we spoke. And I trust we both had smiles on our faces. And when the person didn't, Lord, help this person. Didn't have to be a 30-minute prayer. Lord, help this person. Kindness can be hard work, can it? I mean, think about it. Don't you have people that you work with, family members, friends, neighbors? They can make it hard for you to be kind to them. But do you give up just because they make it hard? No, absolutely not. Okay? Kindness can be hard work. It requires lots of thought and effort. Yes.
They say kindness goes a long way.
Kindness goes a long way. And some people make it even longer. But we don't give up no matter how challenging it may be made. We don't give up. The scriptures teach us that sometimes we must deny ourselves to the attention of the needs of others. So why would anyone bother? Well, the more we understand the benefits of civil behavior, the more we're inclined to pursue it. The more we're inclined as Christians to those who are in our inner circle and in our world, the more we show that consideration, the more we glorify God and how we carry ourselves. So the more we understand the benefits of civility, the more inclined we are to pursue it. The more we minimize the value because we understand the results of being considerate of others. And the less motivated we are to cultivate a less courteous lifestyle because we recognize the value in God's eyes of being considerate. So let's pause to remember why this is worth our time and effort. One, because be kind because it's needed. I don't think that any of us who are here today, when we look at the news that we received upon our entrance this morning, when you open up the handout and see that one full page of people in need, we recognize we must be kind because it's needed. God created human beings to need one another. Though we sometimes in our manliness, our humanness, we try to conceal our dependency, and unmet needs tend to lurk inside each of us. Some are physical, others are social, and some are spiritual. But the good news is God gifted someone to help with whatever our need will be. A parent, a teacher, a coach, a friend, a minister, a philanthropist, an employer, a colleague, a businessman, a professional, a brother or sister in Christ. So in addition to making us needy, God created someone who could assist in filling our needs. We feel needs this morning beyond measure in our prayers for everybody who's in need, wherever they are in this world, and not just in our immediate corner of it. Our prayers, our encouragement, our support, the phone calls, cards, and even when we come together later this afternoon to bless the Collins family and extended family with our Christian love and encouragement as they grieve. What would it be like if nobody showed up? I don't even want to imagine it. But we're going to show up because we're citizens of his kingdom, and that's what we do. That's what we do. Paul said this in Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10. He said, "We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." That means that God created you and me with the unique capacity to serve others. He created us with this unique capacity to serve others, and he gave us a heart that finds fulfillment in doing so. When we reach out to help others in whatever way, we're fulfilled, we're gratified because we have given that extension of God's glory through our efforts. If you don't, I sure wish I would have done something. Okay? If it's too late for what's past, pray and then find a way to reach out. You see, when we lose a loved one, for example, in the beginning, the first week or so, there are people everywhere, aren't they? But in that week following, there's less attention. And you just may be that one who follows the end of the flank. Hi, I was just thinking of you today. I know it's been a difficult week. Doesn't take much to do that. And that just may be your specific calling. So it should come as no surprise that the ministry of Jesus consisted of going about doing good, Acts 10 and 38. You see, disciples of Christ have committed themselves to following in Jesus' footsteps by looking for ways to meet the needs of those that God brings into our life. Um, I'm sure that it's probably been a little over a month now since the Thomas family left to go to Arkansas. And I remember talking with her not long ago with Mandy, and they're settled now where they are. And of course, I remember she said it took them a little longer to get there because they had a little difficulty with GPS. But they found a congregation they've settled in. Michael has found a trail life group to connect with out there. And I still call just to check to make sure they're doing well. Why? Absolutely. Okay. Now, that's not to say that you're not doing anything. You're praying for them and everyone else for whatever their needs may be. Life consists of a series of human encounters that are really opportunities for us to share the glory of God with others. Individuals need kindness. But you know what? So do our societies. That's where we as the Lord's church come in play. Collectively, we can be that lighthouse that radiates the love of God beyond my ability as one person. That's the purpose of the church. To be that consideration for God as his tools, as his instruments in reaching out to others. Compassion is as important to a nation's strength as our economy. If we don't have love for one another, our economy is not going to grow anyway. Compassion is a key that we as Christians ought to have for our nation. In the past week, as we reflected on the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, it was also a time for a renewed compassion. We look back, and it was repeated many times by news sources and others, that times of national emergency bring human sympathy to the surface. We don't need to relive 9/11. We are still fresh with the memories of what happened in our own hearts today. And that's, we should respond again by doing whatever we individually and collectively can do to share that compassion of love. We don't need to wait for recessions or earthquakes or storms and famines to bring out the best in our many citizens. Even at the elders meeting a couple of nights ago, we're tasked with finding what the greatest needs are for the churches and communities that have been just miserably hard hit by these weather catastrophes. We can't begin to imagine. We've had nothing close to it here. But we have a responsibility to be considerate of those that are in need and try to bless them in whatever means we can. Yes, we have Healing Hands International. Yes, we have Churches of Christ Disaster Relief and other organizations out there. So we're searching to find out the best way to help to get things back to normal, as normal can be. And for some, it seems to be a repetition of disaster, just a repetition of it. If no more, pray for those who have been hard hit by these things. The church is a spiritual society that requires consideration for its own health and survival. The number one cause of division in the church: lack of love. Lack of love. Whatever we have in our hearts for one another, it ought to meet God's standards. So we are not plagued with that disease of the lack of love in the Lord's church. Empathy is the basis of mercy, and apathy, the lack of empathy, is the basis of misery. Without thoughtfulness, without kindness, we inflict harm. Just not being thoughtful, just not being kind, we inflict harm. And what we do with that is we add burden to the burdens. That's not what the Lord expects of the citizens of his kingdom. Courtesy and charity are what we are about, what we should be about. Courtesy and charity is more than just being nice. Those things bond us together and they build us up. And there are many reasons to live considerately, but one of the greatest is this: because living considerately is desperately needed in our world. It's desperate. We can change that. We are kind because God commanded us to be kind. He commanded us. One of life's greatest pleasures is pleasing God, isn't it? We ought to live daily to please God, even in our darkest hours. That's one of life's greatest pleasures. It doesn't cost anything, it's inexpensive, and it is not a complicated thing to do. It requires no special equipment. It doesn't require any extensive training to get started, but just a little consideration and you're on your way. Just a little consideration.
Amen.
Yes.
If we sit and think about it, what I do is not for me or for that person. Isn't it for the Lord?
Absolutely. Do you think what he's having said to us, consider one another, is it a suggestion? Is it a suggestion or is he commanding us? He's commanding us to be considerate of one another. Hebrews 10:24. Be. That's not suggesting. He's saying do it. Be considerate of one another, and he gives a reason for it: to stir up love and good spirit. So you're right. The fact that God commands consideration, does God not know what's good for us? So if he's commanding this consideration, he knows what is good for us and for his world. Now, we're human, so we're always going to maybe find a reason to withhold our kindness. I'm busy. I'm just so tired today. The recipient of our kindness or person who's waiting for it may be undeserving. And we may say, well, he doesn't deserve this. I'm not going to do it. You're not doing it for you. You're doing it on God's behalf. You're his tool. You're his instrument. And sometimes we may say, I gave at the office. I give it to the church. So I'm not going to give to this person. So why do these warm impulses hang on? And they really hang on sometimes to us as if they're just dug in. Why are they so painful to ignore? When you shrug them off, they trouble you at the oddest times of day and night. You wonder then, why didn't I just do it when I had the chance to do it? And there are little opportunities. There are little opportunities. We may not get another one. There it was. God gave you an opening to do something considerate, and we closed the door. We closed the door. A genuine human need at that moment. My life mattered to someone. We got to make up our mind. And we'll say, well, next time I'll be ready to seize the moment. And then our humanness challenges us again to go on. A couple of weeks ago, I was on my way to Lowe's. And the Lowe's that I was going to was the only store in the greater area that had what I was looking for. And I had to go to, I think it was Lowe's on Forest Avenue. Pretty good, but they would, online, they were the only ones had it. So I stopped in the Wawa across the street from the Lowe's to maybe get a bottle of tea or something. And a homeless man walked up to me in the store, and he brought a pack of gummy type candy or something and said, can you get this for me? And I'll be honest with you, the first thought was, how much is it? A bag of candy. And it was like $3.96. And my first thought was, well, I'd scratch my head if one of my grandchildren bought this $4 bag of candy. But I went on and gave it to him because I thought about something else. He could have stopped me outside and asked for $5 and gone inside and bought alcohol or cigarettes. So after he got the bag of candy from me, I was getting ready to leave the store. I told the lady, go and give it to him. And I paid for it. Guess what the lady did? Oh, by the way, I went in to buy a cup of coffee. I like Wawa coffee. This is not an advertisement for Wawa, okay? But I bought my coffee. Do you know when the lady rung up my bill, she only rung me up for the $4 bag of candy. I blessed him with a little hesitancy, but in turn, that lady blessed me with my cup of coffee. Absolutely, And I asked her, is he a regular in this store? She said, yes. But when he was done, he wasn't finished with the bag of candy. The next person, he asked, I guess, to help buy something off of the Wawa deli. And that person just walked and said, well, go ahead and order it. Okay. Yes.
This happened to me a couple of weeks ago. Been in the grocery store early. I don't know why it happened. Sometimes you question a whole lot of things and you wonder. I was getting ready to get my few groceries. This lady come in. She went around somewhere and she come back and she said, ma'am, I'm paying for your groceries. I said, what? She said, yes, ma'am, I'm paying for your groceries. She told the cashier, I'll pay for the gentleman's in the back too.
Mm-hmm.
So I thanked her and she said, just pray for my family. I said, you got my prayers, but
Absolutely.
this is a blessing.
She blessed you and the requirement of you. Peggy said that she was in line at the grocery store and the lady paid for her groceries. Now, what's expected of you after that?
Prayer.
Pay it forward some way.
Yeah.
Pay it forward some way to help another person. Absolutely.
What happen if you be extra kind
Mm-hmm.
when an opportunity arises?
Absolutely. We're kind because God commands it. Yes, sir. I could have added 10 ribeyes to it. All right. Then I would have expected a phone call knowing that I love ribeyes, okay? That's how we pay it forward. So when these opportunities come forward, remember, didn't just happen. God opened that opportunity for you. Follow through and do the right thing. Why are we kind? Because gratitude commands it. And I don't guess I've heard a bell yet. You'll let me know, though. Because gratitude demands us to be kind. John, the apostle of love, as he was referred to, explained the basis of Christian charity in this way. In 1 John 4:19, he said, "We love him because he first loved us." With that said, the motive behind every act of love is for the gratitude for blessings that God gives us on a regular basis. We ought to love somebody else and bless somebody else because he loved us first. And he continues to love us no matter how good or bad we are. And he expects us to love others in the same. So the motive behind every act of love is gratitude for blessings received. What is gratitude? Gratitude is more inspiration than it is obligation. So when you know how good it feels to be loved, you want others to share that joy. You want others to have that same feeling. So that's what we do. Be kind because gratitude demands it. When you know how awful it feels to be hopeless, you will go to any length to spare others the pain that you're feeling. We think about a sense of hopelessness that one of our own families is going through right now. But we're going to be there to help lift them beyond that hopeless feeling. Because of who we are, we have hope. We love this world, but I don't think any of us sitting here saying, I want to stay here for all eternity. I don't. It's just not that great. And the scripture gives us descriptions of heaven. And that's where I want to be. That's where you want to be. The love of God is seen in all creation. The intricacies of the world's design show God's interest in your happiness, in your well-being. The earth was filled with beauty for your enjoyment and not just for our subsistence. Did you know that there are over hundreds of types of roses, 250,000 kinds of flowering plants? There are more than 10,000 species of birds, ranging from the sprightly hummingbird to the ostentatious peacock to the colorful toucan and even to the awkward ostrich. The world is filled with beauty for our enjoyment. Imagine the fun God had in designing each one. And God thinking about the look on your face the first time you saw one of those creatures. You remember that? I remember the first time I saw a peacock. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. My brother Michael preached, and I mean, he was one of the most dedicated and devoted preachers and saints that you could ever want to know. His view of life really was to just give everything, the whole thing to God. And as he lay on his deathbed, one of the things he said was, if I had it to do again, I would take time to see the ocean. I would take time to go and see some of the places that God has put you on earth. He died at age 50, and we would say in some standards that was a short life. But he made his priorities, and his priorities were serving God totally. The only vacation for him was leaving Petersburg to go to Nashville to visit his in-laws. And when he lived in Nashville, his only vacation was to drive to Petersburg to visit his family. But as I showed him on the laptop in his final days, the beauty of so many things, and he would go to Virginia Beach. He would carry his youth to Virginia Beach for youth rallies. Even then, he wouldn't even go the few blocks over, take his shoes off and walk in the sand. He just wanted to get back, to get ready for the next day. There's a lot of beauty out there for us. And a part of that beauty is not just the beauty in nature, but the beauty in how we treat each other. The love of God is in creation. The flavors, the fragrances, the sounds, the textures, and the shapes of the created order exhibit an extravagance that could be founded only in divine love. However, John was referencing the love of God in redemption in his discussion with us, in redemption rather than creation. And our understanding of love comes from the example of Jesus Christ at Calvary and what he was willing to give in consideration for you and me. Instead, it teaches us that we do not withhold love based on the actions of others. Instead, we love because we are the children of God. Love is love is for the desperate and not just the deserving. Like John, like Paul, was intrigued by the gracious quality of divine love. He remarked in Romans chapter 5, verse 6, he said, "For while we were still weak at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly." What a perfect description of you and me, weak and ungodly. That's us. Though deserving and helpless, God reached out to us in our wicked condition. It is the wonder of the ages and the mother of all motives. Be kind because gratitude demands it. Lord willing, if we're resume next Lord's Day, we'll begin with the subject, be kind because you'll like yourself more. I think you can hold that thought till then. Thank you so much for your time and attention.